Our next presenter is Maura Bobbitt, who is a death rights advocate and a mortuary scientist. Don't be shy. After working in environmental conservation and nature education, she made the choice to become a licensed funeral director in order to create access to death practices that are community-focused, radically accepting, sustainable, and divested from capitalist forces. Maura believes that good deaths help us lead good lives, and that accepting our death is an act of revolution. Come on, girl.
Oh, hi, y'all. All right, I'm gonna hop right in. So I can't tell you how deeply I related to this scene in Barbie when she asked, "Do you guys ever think about dying?" And caused this record scratch moment at the party. I cause this frequently, and I'm causing it right now for all of you, because I'm going to be talking about death and how I think we're actually getting it wrong. I did use a lot of pink to try and help. I want to create access to simpler, natural burials that are less expensive, better for the environment, and allow for more family involvement. I believe our whole community, our artists, growers, chefs, cosmetologists, our carpenters, should all be part of the death care services in our city. No one is more surprised than me at the path that my life has taken. My background is in nature education, and I worked in roles that enable me to connect people more deeply with nature. This was at the Cibolo Center for Conservation, where I managed the teaching garden. And I thought that I had found my path in life in this work, but there were warning signs like this. I followed the vultures on the land. Whenever an animal died, I would have a little ceremony and place flowers on them. This was our rooster, Worf, who died defending our hens from a hawk, and he received a hero's burial on our land. I also taught about decomposition with great enthusiasm. These are mushrooms, and how invertebrates, bacteria, and fungi break down dead organic material into simpler compounds that then become the building blocks for new life. I find this process incredibly beautiful and comforting. Kids would often ask me, "Will worms eat me when I die?" Turns out, no. Disposition is the legal term for what becomes of your body after you die. And now that I work in death care, this Whataburger disclaimer has become a mantra for me. I don't know what it means for a styrofoam cup, but for humans, I believe that we have the right to decompose if we want to. And currently, that ability is not widely accessible. These are natural burials. Conventional burial, on the other hand, is designed to stop decomposition. We're embalmed, an industrialized mummification process. Caskets are often made of metal and sealed inside outer burial containers, all of this to stop decomposition. Because in America, we are death deniers. We don't like to think about death. We don't make space for the bereaved. This is a last meal potluck that I hosted, where we brought the dishes we'd chosen for our last meals and wore the clothes that we wanted to be buried in. And I highly recommend that you have a similar event with your friends because death is a great teacher, and we're missing out by denying it. It teaches us that our time is limited, to live in the present moment because it's all we have. It teaches us that for all our differences, we have this one great commonality with every living thing. It teaches us our priorities. A healthy relationship with death is a pathway to real freedom. One of my professors frequently told me I should move to California or Colorado, where the laws are friendlier for natural burial. But I'm not just passionate about natural burial itself. I'm passionate about it specifically here, as a tool for conservation, community action, and resistance. Y'all are the people that I want to bury, not Californians. But because I want to do this here, I have to be patient, and I need your help. This is a $68 billion industry, and it's not going to change itself. And until it does, we have to advocate for the kinds of lives and deaths that we want. And remember that no one can stop us from having them if we're willing to build them ourselves. 20 years ago, mortuary science school was mostly male and mostly people from funeral directing families. But these were my classmates, all women who were called to enter this industry as first-generation funeral directors. This industry will change. But there are so many hoops that I have to jump through. In Texas, I have to get an embalming license in order to care for the dead without embalming. This was our final project for restorative arts, where we had to build our own dead faces out of clay. As you can see, I was very bad at it. But it did become a meditation on my own body and its literal objectification and my mortality. And it's another example of how our practices are currently denying death. I had to dissect a human cadaver and perform embalming. And I've never had any inclination towards a medical career. I absolutely hated doing this, and I find it both physically and emotionally challenging. It's a toxic process that, again, serves only to deny the reality of death. And Americans are really the only ones doing it. I've studied all the state and federal laws concerning human disposition and funeral service, and I'd like to take a moment here to remind you that laws tell you what you can't do, not what you can. Natural burials are not forbidden, they're just not explicitly offered. If you're educated and know how to ask for one, then they're accessible at any funeral home. This is Graham Parsons. He made a pact with his road manager that whoever lived longer would take the other's body and burn it at Joshua Tree. When Graham died a few months later, Phil Kaufman kept his word. He stole his body from the airport and lit it on fire at Joshua Tree. And this is the kind of energy that I want to legally bring to funeral service. I want to make a pact with all of you. If I outlive you, I'll follow your wishes to the extent that I'm legally allowed, and I'll go to the ends of the earth to help your community celebrate and grieve you. I want to empower you to make informed end-of-life decisions and help carry them out. This was the pop-up arrangement conference where we had artists displaying local funeral merchandise and a free notary to help with paperwork. That's Allison Hannemeyer of Kingsbury Museum Crates with a carrying board and shell she designed, and Casey Galloway on the right demonstrating how to ice dye a burial shroud. And all of these things are available to you now. You can even make them yourself. This is a performance piece by Gabriel Penny Chafin at an art exhibition I helped organize called Death Rites. He fed attendees the meal that he was eating when he got the news his father died, in a beautiful act of community. Community has been the driving force behind this dream, because I think that we should be supporting each other in grief. And I love the sketch of Adam and Eve by Bobbitt that I saw in Colombia. In it, I see two people choosing knowledge and uncertainty, but they look resolved and they're holding on to each other. And I think it's time to acknowledge that we're all facing the uncertainty of death and that we should be doing it together. And that's it. Thank you.
Oh my gosh, Maura, you killed.
Thank you.
I've been waiting to say that all night. Okay, so I wanted to ask you, we've talked about this before, but once a place is a cemetery, it can only be a cemetery. So is there a way to incorporate like natural burials with land preservation?
Yes, thank you for asking. Actually, cemeteries are a sneaky way of creating public land. You can't restrict access to them once you've performed a single burial. So there are conservation cemeteries popping up around the country that are protecting, 600-700 acres of land. So you're creating public access. And you can also be buried on private land in Texas. So I encourage you, if you have land, to establish a family cemetery and invite your friends to be buried there. And just normalize asking your friends if you can be buried on their land.
I love this. We could talk about death all night.
Yeah.
So what is your last meal?
Well, the one that I brought for that was chicken tikka masala and homemade naan and rice, which was probably at the top of the list.
That's it. Yeah, good. And then what was the most lively class at Mortuary Sciences School?
Oh, gosh.
I have them in my pocket, guys. I can't.
That's a funny question. I mean, honestly, they were all pretty lively. I do want to say I have great respect for all of my professors, all of my classmates, everybody who is taking a different road than I am. They all really care deeply about what they're doing. But my classes were all, I had a good grasp on the absurdity of it all the time. So they were like caskets in our classroom and stuff like that, and it never wasn't funny to me. So yeah, it was a good time.
Well, thank you so much, Maura.